My friend's business has plateaued. After asking him a few questions, I realized that there was a fundamental mismatch between his price and his sales strategy. So in this video, I'm going to share what I told him, why his sales strategy didn't match his price, a simple framework of how to think about it, and the key reason that his business has plateaued and how to fix it. But first, some context on my friend's company. His ACV, his annual contract value, is $8,000. We'll cover this in a different section. He is in the EdTech space, and he has two salespeople that he pays roughly $90,000 a year, so $180,000 per year in total, and they have what looks like an enterprise sales motion. So his sales team are doing a lot of the outbound prospecting, the messaging, and then also the closing. And every year he signs roughly 15 new logos, so he makes around $120,000 every year. So as you can see, he's spending a lot more, $180,000, than he is making, which is $120,000. Before we go any further, what I want you to do is calculate your annual contract value. This is what your average customer pays you every single year. And for the purposes of this video, you don't need the accurate figure. We can just do a rough calculation. If you take your total revenue last year and divide it by your total number of customers, you will get your rough ACV. The framework I like to think about for matching your pricing with your sales strategy is mice, deer, or elephants. What are you hunting? If you're hunting mice, your customers are paying you a small amount every year, so anything less than $1,000. Deer is between $1,000 and $25,000, so they're bigger than mice, but they're still smaller than elephants. Elephants are anything $25,000 a year or above. Again, there are no hard and fast rules. This is just rough back of the napkin calculations. And they all kind of exist on a spectrum. If you think about low ACV, you want everything on this side to be automated as much as possible. So you want your marketing to be as automated as possible and also your fulfillment to be as automated as possible. But on the higher end, as you get to more enterprise, you can afford to start doing more high-touch things in terms of sales and also in terms of delivering your product and your service. A quick caveat here is these numbers are broadly correct for software. If you're running a services business, these numbers might be different. All right, just to dive into the analogy a bit further, if you're hunting mice, your ACV is low, and so you can't afford to make this high-touch sales or fulfillment. So you need channels where you can sell one-to-many and do it cheaply. So examples of channels or marketing channels are SEO, content, virality, referrals, and affiliates. As you can see, all of these are free or cheap, and they're a way to get your message out in a one-to-many fashion. And I kind of think of this as a vending machine strategy. If you go up to a vending machine and you're a user, you decide what you want yourself, you buy it yourself, and also you get it yourself. At no point during this process is a human involved. If you're hunting deer, your ACV is medium. So you can't yet afford high-touch sales, but the purchase price is still expensive. So what do you do in this case? In this case, you want marketing to do a bunch of the work to actually generate the leads for you and then get a human to close them. So examples of marketing and sales strategies that work here are content marketing, webinars, paid ads, and conferences. So you can spend a bit on paid ads and conferences and running webinars to actually get people that are qualified into your funnel. And then once you have them booked on a call, you'll have your sales team to actually close them. This is kind of like a showroom strategy. If you're going in to buy a car, you've probably seen the ads or the marketing for a specific car online. And you're going into the showroom to actually get some assurances, some light customizations, and to actually speak to someone to get you across the line. And then on the other end of the spectrum, hunting elephants, this is where your ACV is high. So not only can you afford high-touch sales, you likely also need high-touch sales too. And this is because it's so expensive where the buyer needs to have their team aligned and also have built up trust with you over time such that they believe that you can solve their problem. Examples of sales and marketing strategies in this case are account-based marketing. Simply what this is if you imagine that marketing, you generally talk about problems and the solutions that you solve to a specific persona, account-based marketing is if you tailor that to one specific company. So let's say you're trying to sell your software solution to Nike. You would talk about your problem, your solution, and make it as specific and as custom to Nike as possible. And again, you can afford to do this because if you close Nike as a client and you're selling something that is high ticket or expensive, then so long as you close them, then all of this marketing and effort that you spend will be justified. Partnerships is another way to do this. executive dinners, etc. So a lot of these things are a lot more high touch, a lot more custom, because the numbers that we're talking about are a lot bigger. This is kind of like a hunting party. Thankfully, we don't hunt elephants anymore, but you can imagine if you were to hunt elephants, you'd have multiple people involved, you'd have multiple touch points, so you'd probably be tracking these elephants over time to make sure that you're in a place to actually pounce on them when they're available. So in customer's case, you're tracking them and you can finally meet them when they're ready to buy. Just to recap this analogy, the vending machine strategy for anything less than $1,000 per year, the showroom strategy, which is marketing to generate the leads and then also sales to close them, and between the $1,000 to $25,000 a year, and then hunting party, where you can start to afford outbound sales and perhaps more strategic partnerships and enterprise sales motion. Let's talk about this with a specific example. My friend's EdTech product has an $8,000 ACV. So instead of doing enterprise sales, which he is currently doing, what he should spend more of his time doing is on marketing. And marketing will generate a good flow of qualified leads for him and for his sales team to actually close. The goal here would be to increase the number of deals they close without actually increasing the number of people. So how can he actually do that? In his case, he knows his ICP pretty well, and he knows their problems and their pain points. So he can do a few things. The first thing that he can do is run LinkedIn ads to his list of prospects. And in a special case, he can upload his list of prospects, 1,000 of them, to run retargeting campaigns. And basically, this is just getting LinkedIn to focus your ads on that list of prospects only. He can also do lookalike audiences where they target not just his prospect list, but prospects that also look like them. And you can do this both on LinkedIn and also Facebook. Once you've run the ads, where do you send them? One thing that he could do is drive them directly to his site or drive them directly to book a sales demo. But the likelihood is, because the purchase price is so high, that they're not ready to buy just yet. They need to trust you and they need to believe that you can solve their problem. So what you can do is send them to an email nurture sequence where you explain the problems that they have, different ways to solve them, or a webinar, which is basically the same thing, but delivered in a live video format. And once you have people in an email nurture sequence or in a webinar, you're able to qualify them. How much money did they actually make? Are they the right people to actually make this purchasing decision? And if you have qualified leads, then what you would do is send them to book a call with his sales team when they're actually ready to buy and they're the right person to buy. In an ideal scenario, his sales team moves from doing a lot of outbound prospecting to actually just handling the inbound. Now they show up to calls having researched the person that actually booked the call and then just try and get them across the line. Another thing he could do is supplement all of this with content marketing, talking more about the specific problem that his ICP faces and different ways that they can solve this. Content marketing can take more time to actually get off the ground, and so that's why people tend to use ads to get started, because it's a lot more efficient. All right. One thing to note before we actually talk about your payback period, how to calculate it, and different ways to decrease it, is that any price and any sales strategy can work so long as that they're paired correctly together. It's a huge caveat because obviously your product won't be the same in different markets. You'll have different custom features, but here is an example to show you what I mean. I stole this from Brian Balfour's blog, and here he shows Shopify and 3 companies that are very similar to it. They have roughly the same product, which is an e-commerce platform. So Shopify focuses on the SMB market, BigCommerce on the mid-market, and then Demandware, which sold to Salesforce, I think, for over $1 billion, focuses on the enterprise. And because they focus on enterprise, their ACV is high, and they're able to afford outbound sales. In BigCommerce's case, their ACV is medium, so they can't afford outbound sales, but they can do a lot of content and partnerships to bring in leads, and then have an inside sales team to close them. And then Shopify, because it's freemium with a very low ACV, they rely on virality, word of mouth, and SEO to grow. This is the bonus part, which is the payback period. Your payback period is how long it takes you to recover the money you spend to acquire a customer. And the way to calculate this is to get your CAC, your cost to acquire one customer. So you want to include your sales salaries, your ad spend, content, etc. Your ACV, which we calculated earlier, and then your gross margin. Basically, what do you keep after you cover your direct costs related to servicing your customer? And then just simply input it in this formula, and you should have a number. This is your payback period in months. So back to my friend's EdTech company. He spends roughly $180,000 a year, 15 new customers. That means his cost to acquire one customer is $12,000. His ACV is $8,000, and his gross margin is 80%. So that brings his payback period to roughly 22 to 23 months, which is pretty bad. And this is the actual reason that they plateaued. They're not generating enough cash to reinvest their profits to grow. And so if you're looking at this for a SaaS company, some rough benchmarks are 12 months or less is good, 12 to 18 months is acceptable, especially if your LTV is strong, and then anything longer than 18 months, you're in a danger zone. There is a caveat here where it is okay in two scenarios. One scenario is where you're just starting out and nothing is optimized just yet. So you're trying to figure out your price point, your ICP, etc. It's not going to be efficient, especially as you're trying to figure out what marketing channel works for you. And that's okay. Another scenario is if you're VC backed, if your LTV is good, your churn is low, and your unit economics look good, I would dump the truck into spending more to acquire more customers. Basically, what you're doing is you're pulling forward the number of customers that you would have gotten in the future. All right, so why does your payback period actually matter? So payback period basically determines how much cash you need to grow. So if you have a shorter payback period, you can reinvest your profits faster and grow faster. Longer payback period, you need more capital to fund growth, and that's one of the reasons people take venture capital. And if you're looking at this and your payback period is higher than you want it to be, here are just a few ways that you can use to reduce them. One is a self-liquidating offer or an upsell. This is basically where you try and pay back the cost to acquire a customer immediately. So let's take the example of a free newsletter. It costs them $2 to acquire every subscriber. And so if you acquire 100 subscribers, you spent $200. Now let's say that they had an $80 ebook upsell or a digital product that costs $80. Obviously, not every single one of these 100 subscribers will convert, but perhaps 3% of them do. That means they've generated $240. So they've spent $200, but they've also earned $240. So in this case, the CAC is actually negative. This is obviously an optimistic scenario, but you can see how the numbers pencil out. A very common way that people do this is annual pricing with either a 10 or 20% discount. We see this in software all the time. So let's say your software is $500 a month, or you can change that to be $5,000 upfront, which is basically a 20% discount. And if your CAC is $3,000, instead of your payback period being 6 months, it is now 0 days. So you get paid back the same day. And the last one is if you have a more complicated product, having a one-time setup fee or a one-time integration fee. So this can go to covering the cost of actually doing the work to integrate, but also acquiring the customer. Cool. Just to quickly recap, we have covered annual contract value, what that is and how to calculate it, the framework for thinking about pricing versus your sales strategy. So are you hunting mice? Are you hunting deer? Or are you hunting elephants? And then we also covered an example of how my friend can change his sales strategy to match his $8,000 ACV, and then how different companies that sell basically the same product can change their sales strategy to match their pricing and still create billion-dollar outcomes. And then finally, we talked about the payback period, what that is, how to calculate it, and ways to actually reduce your payback period. And we also talked about why it matters. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section below. I know I talk quickly, so apologies for that. And if you have any ideas for future videos, let me know too in the comments. Thanks for watching.